Hello, everybody. I hope you're well and welcome back to Voicenotes with Jordan Theresa. How is everybody doing today? Sorry, oh my God. I literally, my voice hit a new decibel there because I cannot contain my excitement because what do we think of the new Voicenotes background? Can everybody please tell me if they like it? I said in my last episode that I've been wanting to switch up the background because in all honesty, number one, that part over there where my bed is, most boring part of my room. This is my lovely little like fake fireplace that doesn't work. Got my little books, and I didn't do my podcast here at first because I thought that the background would just be way too busy. But you know what? Now that I'm like sat here, because this chair's actually quite low. This was what I used to record like the OG Voicenotes podcast on. This rocking chair, this very rocking chair. But this is quite low, so I actually think there's enough white to balance it out that it doesn't look too much. And also, I mean, I can't lie, guys, I love being able to rest my back whilst I record this episode. Like the fact that I can just sit here and like I'm like such a like if sitting with like your legs crushed up against your body has zero fans, I'm dead. Like I love like cozying up and like getting into a ball when I sit in places. So this just feels right. This feels perfect. I'm really happy with this background, but please let me know what you guys think. But how is everybody doing today? One new thing about the background, guys, this is not going to do wonders for my screen time because I have nowhere to put my laptop. So I've like copy and pasted my episode notes onto my phone, which I don't love this. I don't love this. This is not fun, but how cute is my phone case? Sorry, we're going at a million miles per hour. This is from Wildflower. Oh my God, hashtag gifted. I got gifted it and it is literally so cute. It's so Christmassy, which we're going to get onto in a second. Also, you know what's nice about having this background is I can hang up some stockings here for Christmas. I can put like some like tinsel or like some fake Christmas tree decoration here and make this background a little more Christmassy. You know what? I'm so surprised with how much I like this. I thought this was going to be way too much color. But how is everybody doing today? I love to do it. I want to do this little preface because I've noticed a few comments here and there of people leaving comments clearly not knowing that this is a podcast for yappers. Basically saying like, when does she start? Why is she talking about random stuff? This is a podcast. I make video essays under the username Jordan Theresa if you want to find like more structured video essays. But this is a podcast for yappers. So if you do just want to get straight into the topic, on YouTube, everything is timestamped. So if you want to skip over the intro, please do. This is the thing. I feel like I've been watching a lot of like mini video essays or like mini podcasts on YouTube where people just jump straight to it. They don't even say hi. They just go, I want to talk about this today. That is so chic. Like I kind of wish that I could do that, but also I think that I've like cemented Voicenotes as the podcast for yappers that I actually think if I got rid of my intros, I actually think people would be up in arms about it. And to be fair, I love doing this. Like I love yapping to you guys about my life. And like when I yap about my life, you guys yap about your lives back. Like if I'm going on a night out, I'll be like, oh, are you guys going on nights out? And you all talk to me in the comments and I absolutely love it. But if you are someone who you just want to get straight into it, there are timestamps over on YouTube. But to be fair, speaking of long yappy intros, I feel like I don't really have a ton of like life updates. Like I feel like I've been choosing peace at the moment. I've had a very peaceful life. I haven't gone out in ages. I'm not doing loads. I will say my December's looking busy. If you guys are listening to my podcast, you'll know about like how I was talking about my London's big weekender. Well, guys, I have a Christmas big weekender booked in. Unfortunately, it's not with my Londons, it's with my other friends. It's actually with a mixture of loads of different friends actually. But I have a Christmas weekender where from the 17th, so it starts on Wednesday, right? Because I'm going to a work, not even my work drinks. Okay, I might be going to someone else's work drinks on the 17th. Then the 18th is my work Christmas party. And then the 19th, one second, what have I got in the diary? The 19th, me and my girls, we've got our Christmas dinner and our gift exchange because we do a really big secret Santa. We send in our wish list. We spend like 200 quid on each other so we can have like a real like magical Christmas. It's so lovely. And then the day after that, we've got our girls' Christmas night out. So that's my big Christmas weekender. So I've got a pretty stacked December. So I'm trying to like take it easy where I can. So honestly, I've just had such a chilled weekend this weekend. I came on my period yesterday. So like I just want to have like relaxed. I like tidied my bedroom. I had my cardboard collected this morning. Like, the living room redecoration nearly done. Just need to hang up the pictures and then we're done. Jack hosted a screening of Frankenstein. God, that is a long film. Proud of everything that he does. So glad that he interviewed Jacob Elordi, but bloody hell. And Oscar Isaac and Guillermo del Toro, of course. But oh my God, that was a long film. I wasn't expecting it to be so long. 3 hours. But I'm actually, guys, I'm trying to get back into my going to the cinema era. I am going to see Begonia on Wednesday. I do actually want to see that new Sydney Sweeney film, even though like she's actually digging her hole so badly at the moment. I really love a sports biopic, and I know about the story of Christy Martin, and I think that it's like such an incredible story. To be fair, I haven't watched it yet, so I can't like comment, but I am still so annoyed that Katie O'Brien didn't get cast in that role. Katie O'Brien is in the film. I saw Katie O'Brien in Love Lies Bleeding and she was so good in it, and I just feel like from what I can see, I feel like Sydney Sweeney was massively miscast. But also it's really interesting. There's a lot of conversation going around about this sort of right-wing pivot that she's taken, and essentially this like right-wing pandering, and how, look, you can pander to the right wing all you want, but why is no one going to see her films? Like, I think that's really interesting. The difference, if there's any difference in left-wing versus right-wing circles and who turns out to the cinema or not, I think it's really interesting the way that, you know, she sort of shot herself in the foot here and is pandering to an audience who don't actually care enough to watch the work that she's in. But I do actually genuinely really want to see that film because I want to see if it's good or not, and then maybe I'd make a video about it. But I also really want to see Marty Supreme as well. Again, another sports biopic. It's about ping pong. I just love a sports biopic, guys. I love it. And then another thing, I'm cooking up a really exciting video. 2 days ago, I was on eBay and I spent over 100 quid on Lads Mags. If you're not from the UK and you don't know what a Lads Mag is, it was basically a male magazine for men from sort of the early 2000s to the very early 2010s. And basically these are like, they border from, you know, magazines that are a bit naughty to like magazines that are full on, I can't say this word, but like absolute filth, basically. And I want to talk about essentially the downfall of these magazines, why they don't exist anymore, and just lads culture in general in the UK is something that I'm really interested in. I'm really excited to get started on the video. Leanne's gathering the research now, and I spent over 100 quid on, I would like to say, guys, second-hand nuts magazines I bought. I bought second-hand nuts magazines. That's disgusting. But I want you guys to know that's how dedicated I am. There's actually this magazine called Front, which is like, again, like the cover is just like topless women, and it's got like topless women in it. But there's also a spread about Charlie XCX in there. Like, this is the interesting thing about these magazines. It's magazines like Front and Loaded. They were like a mixture of sort of like, you know, very sexual, porny magazines, but then also lifestyle and music. So it's like really crazy seeing this Front magazine of like essentially all these like topless women, but then also a spread about Charlie XCX and like Kings of Leon. But yeah, I know that it's early, but I'm getting pretty excited for Christmas. I am not, you know, I'm not a Scrooge or a Grinch, and I'm not a like super Christmassy person either. I'm pretty neutral. You know what I actually think would massively get me in the mood for Christmas? Rewatching all of Zoella's old Christmas videos. Like, I used to watch Zoella's videos back when I was one of her OGs, guys. I subscribed to her when she had 100k. I need everyone to know that. I used to watch Zoella's videos when I was like 14 years old, and she used to post like, you know, like Christmas Primark hauls, Christmas makeup tutorial, what I got for Christmas, what's in my stocking, and I just absolutely love it. I just absolutely love it. Nothing would get me more in the Christmassy mood. I actually think as a child, presents aside, you're actually more likely to get in the Christmassy mood because you're in school and like you're sort of within this like your school gets very Christmassy. Did my school put up a Christmas tree? I actually can't remember, but like you do like Christmassy themed activities in the last week, and that would get you really in the mood for Christmas. I feel like as an adult there's not a lot of factors to, or maybe for me because I am self-employed, that there's not a lot of things to get me in the mood for Christmas. But I'm feeling a little bit Christmassy this year. Maybe it's because I'm so determined to do my Christmas shopping on Black Friday, because last year I did my Christmas shopping on the 23rd of December, which, by the way, isn't even that much of a bad idea. I don't always have a ton of presents to buy people, because the presents I have to do, gift for my dad, gift for my little sister, which is always fun. because I get to go to Hamleys. I go to Hamleys twice a year to get my little sister a Christmas present and to get my little sister a birthday present. Look, on the 23rd of December, it was very confronting. I had it out with a group of breakdancing elves trying to get this Christmas present for my little sister. And I would like to say, my whole little hack last year, and I honestly don't think it was that much of a bad idea, was I went into Central at like 8 a.m. and I did all of my Christmas shopping in 2 hours because it's so quiet. I went on like a Tuesday. I'm pretty sure the 23rd was a Tuesday. Everyone's still at work on the 23rd, so I was like massively benefiting there. I also remember I had to go into Central because I broke my laptop on the 23rd of December. Yeah, result. But anyways, so I get to go to Hamleys and it's very fun. I think the people that work at Hamleys are heroes. I absolutely love it. Even though like it's a bit of a stimulation nightmare. There's a lot of like kids and I get a little bit stressed out around kids. And that isn't a me disliking kids thing, because I think if you're anti-child, you're anti-women, and we can make a whole separate podcast episode about that. But I get very like overwhelmed around large groups of children. Like this is how I know that I could probably never have kids, because like I can deal with one, but like any more than two, I start to get very stressed out, and it's no fault of their own. I don't dislike kids at all. It's a personal like me thing. But I think the reason why I'm getting in the Christmassy mood is because I'm so determined to do my Christmas shopping on Black Friday this year. I'm going to be an organized queen, and I'm thinking that we're going to do a little Christmas decor. I might even pop to Tiger after this and get some Christmas decor for our new Voicenotes background. Hell yeah. But you know one thing about Christmas? I have a bit of a vendetta against like Christmas events. Like even Winter Wonderland, I have mixed emotions about, because I've been before, and the times that I've been, it's actually been so fun. Like I can't lie, but I have mixed emotions about it because it does. I mean, does it? I don't know whether it's forced fun. I guess it's almost like it feels very capitalistic. It feels like super corporate. Sorry, is me rocking on the chair annoying? Please let me know. But I think I have a bit of a vendetta against Christmas events because it's like, it's like the capitalism of it all, right? And I know Christmas is inherently capitalistic, but also like, at least in my realm, I feel like it kind of isn't, because with my family, we don't go all out on the gifts. If we do a secret Santa, we'll do like a £100 secret Santa. So we only buy one gift for one person, and we'll just put in the family group chat what we want. We're very simple like that. So it doesn't feel super like capitalistic in my world, in my realm. But basically what sort of triggered this off was I saw a TikTok, and this girl was basically like, here's 10 Christmas events that you want to go to in London this Christmas, and book it quick because they sell out. Already I was annoyed because I watched this TikTok on the 5th of November. So I was like, why are you telling me to book a Christmas event now? I don't know what I'm going to be doing on the random Tuesday in December. I might have plans. But anyways. So I then heard this girl out because the first event grabbed my attention. She said that it was a like subs event at Somerset House, and basically all these like sub sandwich companies and makers were like parking all their vans in like that little courtyard in Somerset House, which is, I love Somerset House, by the way. Somerset House has 0 fans, I'm dead. And then you go in and you could buy, like, they all do their own Christmas subs, all this. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm sad. I loved this, right? Because I haven't done this in ages, but I remember a couple of years ago, I just spent a whole afternoon eating in Borough Market on like a random Tuesday, and it was fantastic. So I was like, okay, like I am sat for this. So I start like making a mental note of it. I want to know if I'm being unreasonable here, but the event is ticketed. I was like, and look, I don't go to food events a lot, so maybe it's the norm that these events are ticketed, and maybe I'm being unreasonable. Please let me know if I'm being unreasonable. But I thought the event being ticketed was a little bit cheeky, like £10 a ticket. Because I'm thinking, wait a minute, I'm going to go in there and buy a sandwich. And you think I'm not going to go in there and buy a sandwich? And this is the thing, now I really want to go, but I almost don't want to spend £10 on the ticket because of the principle. But also, can you guys please tell me if I'm being unreasonable? Also, I like another thing which I feel like is really Christmassy and like wintry is my outfit. I'm like really bad at wearing brighter, lighter colours in the winter. But this colour, it's like this is from Isabella Vrana, by the way. You know what? Let's do a quick OOTD now. Isabella Vrana, Peachy Den cargos. And I've also got some fluffy socks on because it's winter, because it's Christmas. Breaking my phone addiction update. we have had a little bit of a bad phone day on Friday. So I'm recording this on Sunday, and we had a bad phone day on Friday, and it was because I was a bit hungover, and it was because I had anxiety after the TikTok awards. Sorry guys, I would like to know, I'm truly swallowing my pride by admitting that I had anxiety after the TikTok awards, because I feel like that's inherently embarrassing, saying that I had anxiety after the TikTok awards. I don't know what it was. I think it is just like going to those like, you know, essentially I can imagine it's what it's like having anxiety after going to like a work Christmas party or like going to work drinks. And I didn't even get that drunk. I had a couple glasses of Prosecco, couple glasses of wine. It was a fun time, but it was actually so crazy how easily I slipped back into like mindlessly scrolling on my phone when I was hungover. And I was like really struggling to like get out of bed. And I am still not scrolling on my phone in the morning, but I am beginning to drop my habit of reading. Like I would literally just rather sit up and stare at the ceiling. Or this morning I totally cheated. This morning I went on my laptop and I just had a little scroll on Pinterest. Jordan, that's still scrolling. I will say being able to like not mindlessly scroll, I think that I'm getting the hang of. I'm definitely slipping, but I'm like willing to like get my shit back together. Especially because I noticed that how much better I feel not scrolling. But also I think something that I'm actually really more struggling with my phone addiction is being able to leave my phone in another room and being able to switch off my notifications. Because if I switch off my notifications, I will just constantly check my phone. Like I would rather have my notifications on. So when a notification comes on, I can just straight away read it and then just like be done with it. I think something that I am really struggling with is I can't even imagine putting my phone in a different room because I know that I will just go back and check it. So can someone tell me, is it possible to break my phone addiction and still have a relationship with my phone where it's with me all the time and I'm like sort of checking the notifications, but I'm not scrolling? Or is that still a phone addiction in of itself? Do you know what I mean? But I'm doing okay. I'm not super happy with myself, but it will do. I literally put no thoughts of the week this week, but I think my thought of the week was about those London Christmas events. I think it reminds me of like, do you guys remember in Columbia? So on Columbia Road, they had these things, they had this thing called like Christmas Wednesdays or Christmas Tuesdays, where like every Tuesday in the run up to Christmas, all the shops stayed open late and there was Christmas caroling. And the council had to shut it down because it became so overcrowded because it went viral on TikTok. I think that's what like Christmas events kind of remind me of. Like, I guess it sort of feels like TikTok fodder, even though here I am looking at Christmas events on TikTok. Already showed you guys my outfit of the day, but just before we get into today's episode, if you do find yourself wanting more voice notes content, don't forget to subscribe to the Substack. Not only do we have some written articles to go alongside the episodes, which are available to everyone, but we also have bonus content available for paid subscribers. Obviously, I do like to say before I sort of advertise my Substack, is it genuinely, it's no pressure at all. Substack is just an avenue for me to talk about, to make bonus content and discuss things which wouldn't go down super well on the platform of youtube.com, as much as I love her. But over on Voicenotes, we do a monthly bonus episode and also a monthly live stream. The bonus episodes we've done so far is Sydney Sweeney, Bonnie Blue, and most recently we did one about J.K. Rowling and Emma Watson and Harry Potter adults. The next bonus episode, is going to be about open relationships. It's going to be about David Harbour, Lily Allen, West End girl. Super excited to get started. So if that is something which interests you, click the link in the description, subscribe to the Substack, but obviously no pressure if not. So in today's episode of Voice Notes with Jordan Theresa, I want to talk about men who don't have friends. I want to talk about why so many men don't have friends. And there's a lot of factors which inspired today's episode. I think sort of ongoing conversations surrounding the male loneliness epidemic and how often not only is the blame shifted onto women for this, but also like the onus of resolving this epidemic is often shifted onto women. I also had a conversation with my therapist, which really inspired me with this episode, where me and my therapist, we be yapping. And one conversation that we had was we spoke about how a lot of middle-aged men don't have that many friends, and how a lot of middle-aged men, their friends are actually just their wives' friends' husbands. And another thing which inspired this episode was oh my God, what a shock, a TikTok I saw of, essentially it was this man saying like, oh, apparently guys don't know anything about their best friends. So then he sort of put it to the test and he asked his best friends what his ex-girlfriend's name was, and none of them could answer. And I think all of this made me want to discuss the state of male friendship. And I want to make it very clear that, like all episodes, I want this to be conversational. I have spoken with men. I have read a lot of articles written by men, but at the end of the day, I'm not a man. This is not my lived experience. As I'm writing this episode, I'm not writing this episode to mock men. I'm not writing this episode to look down or talk down on men. I want this comment section to be an open place where if you're a man and you want to share your experience with making friends, maintaining friends, please go ahead. Like, I want to read your perspective. At the end of the day, although men have set this system up, not only do men and women play a part in upholding this system, but men continue to uphold this system and are like this in their friendships because of the way they have been socialized. And trying to unlearn those behaviors is a near impossible task. I remember when I was trying to sort of get myself into the headspace of what it must be like for a man to like open up emotionally, because I spoke to a few straight men that I know. For example, one of the sort of middle-aged men in my life, don't want to out him, told me that he hadn't cried in 20 years. And like, he sort of said it as something that he was proud of. And I remember I've asked a few men in my life, and a lot of them have said that it's just something that they can't do. It's something that they can't imagine doing, is like being emotional. And I think that like trying to sort of unlearn that behavior of being more comfortable in your emotions, I can imagine is similar to asking women to unlearn beauty standards, where like it's not only like built into the fabric of our upbringing, but it's also everywhere that we look, that it's near impossible to unlearn. And I can imagine that's similar with men wanting to not be so emotionally hardened, is sort of everywhere that they look, their peers, their parents, the media they consume, so much of it is essentially telling men to repress their emotions, and that they shouldn't be emotional, that if that is, that's a bad thing. And the reason why in this episode I am placing an emphasis on straight men and straight men maintaining their friendships and having poor friendship sustaining skills is that friendship problems is a problem most common within straight men. Queer men build community and emotionally deep friendships with one another due to societal or familial shunning in a way that straight men do not. Women also build emotionally deep friendships in a way that straight men do not. And I would like to say, I know that a lot of people are going to be like, I don't even want to say that not all men, but I know that a lot of people are going to be like that. Of course, I know that not every single man is like this. The problems that straight men face maintaining and building friendships is very widespread. I've read so much about it. Like, it really is an epidemic that a lot of people are discussing. So I'm not pulling this out of my ass. This isn't coming out of nowhere. But obviously I don't want to sit here and claim that no straight man can never have a deep friendship with another straight man. Of course they do, but it's actually pretty rare to come across. A majority of my research for this episode, I've been reading articles written by men. I've been listening to men's experiences of friendship. I've been speaking to men in my life. And as I said, I want this comment section to be a free space where men can express their experiences with friendship as well. So I think a good point to start this episode off on is the male loneliness epidemic. It's a debate where a lot of conversation about male friendship has stemmed from. Essentially, the debate that men are experiencing higher levels of loneliness than any generations before them, and are experiencing higher levels of loneliness than women in their generation. And unfortunately, the conclusion of the male loneliness epidemic conversation was that it is women's jobs to solve this epidemic, that women need to lower their dating standards because of the male loneliness epidemic. The onus was placed onto women to resolve this crisis, but also women were blamed for this crisis, which I think is why a lot of women don't want to give the male loneliness epidemic the time of day and don't lend it a lot of legitimacy. And there is something to say about the fact that the loneliness epidemic, it isn't just exclusive to men. I think that the term the male loneliness epidemic can paint that this is an issue, that loneliness is an issue which only affects men, when actually there is especially amongst Gen Z, there is a loneliness epidemic epidemic, which is widespread across all genders. This isn't just exclusive to men. A lot of this is due to technology, this illusion of company with our phones, the fact that we're entertaining ourselves to death, the fact that the more time we spend on our phones, the more time we spend alone. But also there's the cost of living crisis. A lot of people live further away from their friends than ever before. And also, I think still post-pandemic, there's a lot of social anxiety amongst young people too. So as you can imagine, when it comes to conversations about the male loneliness epidemic, there's all these factors that contribute to the epidemic of loneliness. Yet why are women the ones that are being blamed? Especially, I found that conversations around the male loneliness epidemic, there was so much emphasis being placed on women lowering their dating standards, but there was nearly nothing being placed on men reaching out to other men, of lonely men connecting with each other and forming friendships. Essentially, what was painted as the resolution to the male loneliness epidemic was getting into a romantic relationship. And romantic relationships can be very precarious. So the most important thing when resolving loneliness is actually building friendships, not building romantic relationships. And I know, I'm going to have some young men listening to this episode thinking that they don't relate to this, that it doesn't impact them and will never impact them, that they've got lots of friends, they're busy all the time, they've got lots of plans. Well, get strapped in for the shock of your life, guys, because loneliness actually tends to affect men the most in their middle age, between the ages of sort of 40 and 50 to 60. So if you're a 25-year-old and you've got loads of friends and you're thinking that this won't affect you, it very well could. To quote Alina Disick for The Guardian, some call it a friendship recession, a time in midlife when close male friendships sink to their lowest. According to data from the Survey Center of American Life, 15% of US men said they do not have close friends in 2021, compared with 3% in 1990. Those reporting 10 or more close friends decreased from 33% to 13% in the same period. And, John Mulaney said this joke on SNL where he said, your dad doesn't have friends. And if you think your dad has friends, he doesn't. Your mum has friends. And this is what I discussed with my therapist, actually, that a lot of middle-aged men don't have that many of their own friends. They don't have that many close friends. And I think we can all, cast our attention to our dads, our uncles, the older men in our lives. And we can think, I actually don't think they've got that many close friends. And when you think about their social plans are actually hinged on their wife. So in this episode, I want to discuss how we have gotten to this point. Why is it so, such a widespread, widely reported phenomenon that men hemorrhage friends in their middle age? And is there anything that can be done about it? Because through my research, this seems to start in childhood and the way that boys are socialized to build friendships with other boys, and it acts towards their detriment in their adulthoods. I think something which I discovered whilst researching for this episode, which made this so interesting to me, what we see the state of male friendships today, which aren't very emotionally deep, sometimes they're friendships of convenience, it sharply juxtaposes male friendships pre-1900s, which were loudly passionate and romantic. I read an incredible article on The Atlantic, which helped me research for this segment, which I'm going to leave linked down below. It's called How the Passionate Male Friendship Died by Tiffany Watt-Smith. By the way, if I can influence you guys to do anything in my career, it's to get an Atlantic subscription. I can't remember how much my Atlantic subscription is. I think it's about £8 a month, and it is so worth it because you can actually listen to a majority of their articles. So I either listen to in the morning a Guardian Today in Focus, or I listen to a Atlantic article because their articles are so good, and they're not read out by AI, they're read out by actual real people. But anyways, this is an amazing article, How Passionate Friendship Male Died by Tiffany Watt-Smith. It's based on her book, which I believe is called it's called Bad Friend, How Women Revolutionize Modern Friendship. I haven't read the book, but this is like an excerpt from the book, I believe. Writes in this article for The Atlantic that there are multiple examples of passionate male friendships throughout history. There were traveling doctors Sir John Finch and Sir Thomas Baines who were buried together. There was French philosopher Michel de Montaigne. By the way, I'm probably mispronouncing that. I am actually French. My dad's French, but I don't speak any French. So, who wrote of his friendship and deep connection with Etienne de la Botte in an essay on friendship, which this sort of behavior is unheard of. And I know that some people are going to say that these men, the historic friendship joke, these men could have been in romantic relationships, and they very well could have. But the reason why this kind of deep, passionate friendship was only exclusive between two men was because it actually has roots in misogyny. This is genuinely the most interesting thing I have found out recently. I actually can't stop thinking about this. Men were thought of as the only ones capable of building strong friendship bonds, and not women. Women were thought of as too flighty, stupid, and too easily distracted by romantic relationships to build deep friendships. Medical misogyny was also rife at the time, and it was commonly accepted that women's brains were colder and weaker than men's. Even Aristotle's 3 tiers of friendship, written in 4th century BCE before Christ, the top tier, which was the perfect friendship, could only be a bond between 2 men. To quote Tiffany Watt-Smith for The Atlantic, 2 men alike in virtue, who saw each other as a second self. It was, as later philosophers explained, as if one soul dwelled in 2 bodies. So soulmates, and soulmates were thought of as something which could only happen between 2 men because women's brains were incapable of building that deep of a friendship with another person. And it's interesting because this form of male friendship, this perfect friendship, this one soul between 2 bodies, being buried together, writing an essay about how transcendent your connection is with another man, is almost unheard of nowadays. So what happened? How did we get here? How did we go from these deep, passionate male friendships to friendships where men themselves admit that they don't feel like they can not even just emotionally open up to someone, but they even feel too vulnerable, too afraid, as in it's fringing on their masculinity to even reach out and ask to see one of their friends. Again, to quote Tiffany Watt-Smith directly, because I couldn't have worded it better myself, within 100 years of Finch's and Bain's burial, the rules of their emotional community began to shift. The second part of the 18th century was a period of revolutionary fever and social reform across Europe and America. As abolitionist, women's rights, and anti-poverty campaigns gathered momentum, so did discussions about emotion and sympathy, the old word for empathy. Poets, artists, and philosophers in this new age of sensibility began to speak in reverent tones of the supposed heightened sensitivity of the female mind. They helped advance the idea that women enjoyed some special skill in friendship and were capable of deeply emotional connections with the poor, the disenfranchised, and one another. By the 19th century, though, this belief in women's empathy had hardened into a new ideal of middle-class Victorian femininity, the angel of the house. The consummate woman was supposed to be tender, loving, and eternally supportive. Devoted friendships were seen as proof of her compassionate nature. Girlhood bonds were considered practice for the affection and sacrifice necessary for future roles as wives and mothers. Guys, isn't that such a gag? The reason why the deep male passionate friendship died is because as these movements, these human rights movements, abolitionist movements, women's rights movements, anti-poverty movements gained some traction, they would often utilize language surrounding empathy, which began to essentially turn men off, and they used to see it as almost a weakness. This heightened sensitivity, they called it, was exclusive to the female mind. Alongside young girls being encouraged to form deep bonds with other girls and encouraged to be compassionate and empathetic, because essentially it's practice for when they become housewives. Being compassionate, being empathetic actually became a new standard for what a woman should be if they want to be a good wife, which is very interesting. So that's how the deep male passionate friendship died. But I want to get a little more into this. I want to talk about the contemporaries, and I really, it's something which is interesting me throughout all of this, is why does this male friendship crisis seem to affect middle-aged men the most? Why is it so widespread and widely reported amongst middle-aged men? Why do friendships hit a block at that specific point? When asked why their friendships seem to take a backseat once they hit their 40s, many men responded, well, I got married, I moved away, I have children, I don't have time. But their wives, although they definitely have less time for their friendships too, they have still managed to maintain some of them. So what is going on here? And I think a lot of the reason why male friendships seem to have quite shaky foundations and can fall by the wayside so easily is because the thing is, it sounds really harsh when I say they lack emotional depth. A lot of straight men are not emotional with each other in their friendships. They don't open up a lot to each other in their friendships. And this is because of the way men have been socialized. There is so much emotional shaming in the upbringing of a boy, whether it's by their parents, their siblings, their friends. If a little boy, I don't even want to say experiences heightened emotions or is sensitive. I want to say when a little boy experiences very regular emotions, including sadness, crying, upset, at age 5, he will be completely emotionally hardened by age 10. As I said earlier, some of the middle-aged men in my life, one of them said to me that he hasn't cried in 20 years. And he said that as if it was something to be proud of. And I think another sort of manifestation of the fact that a lot of men don't open up to each other is the fact that male friendships are very non-confrontational. I do think that women do have this reputation of quote unquote being more drama and having more drama in their friendships, when really I actually think that women, the reason why there does tend to be more drama and more confrontation and more arguments in female friendship is because women do have higher standards for their friendships, and they feel a lot more deeply emotionally connected to their friendships. So when their friend does something to upset them, for example, they are more likely to raise it. Therefore, there's more likely to be quote unquote drama. It's actually interesting that in my own life, I know both men and women who their friends have slept with their exes, right? So I knew a couple of girls that this happened to. I've known a couple of guys that this happened to. Every girl that I know that this has happened to has cut that friend off. Meanwhile, the men that I know in my life actually didn't cut those friends off, and in fact never even confronted these friends about the fact that they had slept with their ex, which I thought was so interesting. Again, maybe this is exclusive to me and my friendship group or some of the men in my life that I know. And also I think another thing is I feel like we never see, or very rarely see, portrayals of deep male friendships in media. I feel like the last deep male friendship I saw in media, which to be fair was a very unhealthy and manipulative friendship, was Tony and Sid in Skins. But at least you could tell they were very deeply emotionally invested in each other. I even found that in emotionally poignant moments in buddy comedies, which I feel like is probably the biggest representation of male friendship, are those goofy buddy comedies. Even these emotionally poignant moments are entrenched in irony and humor, which to be fair, I don't necessarily think is an exclusively male issue. I actually think that Gen Z has a huge irony problem. Everything is always covered up in a joke. I also think another contributing factor as to why men are so reluctant to form deep emotional bonds with each other is the fear of being called gay. And this is the thing, it's so interesting because I feel like progressively, of course, society is taking a swing to the right, absolutely. But I think progressively we are in such a different spot where at least where I live in London, anyone that is homophobic, it does not fly at all. I don't even know anyone that's homophobic that I know in my friendship groups. But, despite how far we've come as a society, a little boy's upbringing is entrenched in casual homophobia. Even the process of emotional hardening is often rooted in homophobia. Phrases like "you're being a pansy," "don't cry, that's gay." And again, it can come from all angles. You can be very progressive parents and not use language like that, but then it could come from their friends and their peers at school. It is inescapable for young boys, which again, as I've said, is really sad considering how far we've come socially in terms of gay rights. But also I think another manifestation and an example of how homophobic straight male culture can be is the fact that there still in 2025 is not a publicly out professional football player in this country. And also I think that this fear of being perceived as gay, or this fear of forming true emotional bonds with another man, so much of it is subconscious. Because it doesn't just affect the depth of your friendship, it also affects the intimacy of your friendship, if that makes sense. So, for example, I know a lot of very progressive straight men, right? A lot of these men would not share a bed with another straight man if they went on a trip together. And I think that is the strangest thing. I think above everything, I think it's really unfortunate, because I found that when I go on trips with my friends and we share a bed, it's where the most kikiing happens. It's where, like, you know, it's another way of, it's another level of intimacy in your friendship, and it brings you closer together. So many straight men, even men that they themselves think they're very progressive, would not share a bed with another straight man, with one of their male friends. They go, oh, like, I don't know, I just wouldn't do that. That's what you do. When you ask them, they go, oh, I just don't think I'd do that. I just don't really want to. But, you know, subconsciously, it's because of that fear of being perceived as gay. And again, as I've said, I think it's a massive shame, because I think by not doing that, by not sharing a bed with a friend on a trip, you're missing out on a layer of intimacy that, you know, women have with their friends. And also, I think the whole, like, the fear of being perceived as gay, it's also very ironic, because I found that if we go on the real extreme end of, like, these really toxically, you know, this sort of toxic masculine space, men that are friends with each other, those male friendship groups where they objectively don't like women, they don't like hanging out with women outside of sleeping with them, those friendships are actually the ones that tend to border on being quite homoerotic. The reason I'm saying this is because these men tend to not only be misogynistic, but they also tend to be very homophobic. And it's really interesting that it does borderline on being quite homoerotic if you only ever want to hang out with your guy friends and all you do is objectify women and talk about sex. But if we just circle back for a moment, the emotional hardening, the fear of being perceived as gay, it all contributes to straight men not opening up to one another. And opening up to your friends deepens your friendship, it deepens your connection. And the deeper the connection, the more likely you are to prioritize that friendship and keep that person in your life. And if you tie this into the middle-aged male friendship crisis, not only does the shallowness of these friendships mean that it's easier for them to fall by the wayside, but if you are struggling in your middle ages, if you are having a midlife crisis, you're much less likely to be able to open up to your friend if you've never opened up to them in the first place, if that was never your rapport. But I also think there are a few other factors to this middle-aged male friendship crisis. You know, for example, our attitudes towards marriages really shifted in the past 100, 200 years. They've shifted from being, you know, economic and of convenience to about true connection with another person and romance. Romantic relationships are also prioritized in the West. We have a very individualistic culture, which leads to families and, for example, middle-aged men to isolate themselves, you know, whether that's driven by social reasons or economic reasons. But also, there are a lot of negative stereotypes about male friendships, male friendship groups, that they'll misbehave, that they'll get up to no good, which makes women very apprehensive to quote unquote allow their partners to spend one-on-one time with their male friends, which actually isn't very fair. Another, which I think is a huge driving factor towards this middle-aged male friendship crisis, is weaponized incompetence. Like John Mulaney said in his SNL skit, your dad doesn't have friends, your mum has friends. A lot of middle-aged men rely on their wives for their social planning. I've discussed weaponized incompetence before on the podcast and on my main channel. And of course, there's going to be a lot of generalization here, but we've seen this through the distribution between household chores between little girls and little boys. Also the division of domestic labor between men and women. This is very much simplifying the issue, of course, but men do go from their mothers doing a lot of stuff for them to their wives doing a lot of stuff for them. And one of those things being social planning. And when their wife isn't doing the social planning for them, all of a sudden they don't have that many friends because they haven't done much to maintain their friendships over the years. But this is the thing, is that oh my God, I can't believe I'm about to say in defense of men. But a lot of this sort of quote unquote friendship maintenance is tied to, you know, what I'm essentially going to call masculinity anxiety, like this anxiety over whether you're being masculine or not, because there are so many behaviors that men feel like they're compromising their masculinity by partaking in. For example, reaching out to their friends and making plans. I hope that this is different amongst younger generations, but the articles that I was reading, a lot of middle-aged men feel really anxious and like they're compromising something by asking one of their friends if they want to hang out one-on-one. Also, you know, obviously, as we've mentioned throughout this episode, opening up to their friends. And another thing which I read about an article that I didn't realize that men don't do. And to be fair, again, generalization, but a lot of women I know, myself included, is we'll message our friends. I'll message my friend after we've hung out and just say, not all the time, but a lot of the time I will message my friend after we hang out and be like, oh, I had such a lovely time. Like, we were like, can't wait to see you again. Da, 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 da. A lot of men don't do that. And you'd be surprised like how far that goes in like maintaining and watering and letting that friendship flourish. But also, you know, things like writing a thoughtful card for your friend is a lot of things, is a thing that, you know, straight men don't do, or a lot of straight men don't do because they feel like they're compromising their masculinity. There is also a shift that happens between young adulthood and your middle ages. You essentially have to start working for your friendships. Once you move further away from your friends, once you get married, especially once you have children, you have to make an active effort. It's very different from in your 20s when you can just drop into someone's birthday drinks. You know, maybe because you have kids, you've stopped going to weekly football. I think that women are maybe a lot used to maintaining their friendships via reaching out and active social planning, maybe in a way that men aren't. I'm actually really interested to know this, but I do think that partially could be because I think that men sometimes have a lot more activities to bond over. Like, I know so many men in my life that go to football, that like go to their like weekly football. Don't get me wrong, there definitely are like weekly activities that women do partake in, but I actually noticed that men partake in a lot more weekly activities than women. One of those being football, for example. Either it's playing football or it's watching the football. So I think that because of this, a lot more women are used to reaching out and actively, you know, social planning in a way that men aren't. As I said, you know, especially with the emotional hardening, a lot of this is a result of toxic masculinity. And I think it's such a shame because I think a lot of men maybe don't even realize how much toxic masculinity actually harms them more than anything. We're sort of coming up to the end of this episode, but I want to finish this episode off with a Bell Hooks quote. This is a quote from The Will to Change: Men, Masculinity, and Love. The first act of violence that patriarchy demands of males is not violence towards women. Instead, patriarchy demands of all males that they engage in acts of psychic self-mutilation, that they kill off the emotional parts of themselves. If an individual is successful in emotionally crippling himself, he can count on patriarchal men to enact rituals of power that will assault his self-esteem. Silverstein argues that men suffer by the patriarchal insistence that they enact rituals of alienation. Patriarchal masculinity insists that real men must prove their manhood by idealizing a loneliness and disconnection. Feminist masculinity tells men that they become more real through the act of connecting with others, through building community. Feminist masculinity presupposes that it is enough for males to have value, that they do not have to do, to perform, to be affirmed and loved. Rather than defining strength as power over, feminist masculinity defines strength as one's capacity to be responsible for the self and others. But yes, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm really interested to know you guys' thoughts. It was really interesting. I feel like it's like a perspective I've never talk about middle-aged men. Like, that's actually probably my lowest demographic on this pod, but really interested to know your thoughts. And I do hope that things are changing amongst younger generations. I feel like they are, but there definitely are still like subconscious blocks there within young men. Like the fact that so many young, like pretty progressive men that I know won't share a bed with another man if they're on a trip. Like, I think that's so interesting, and I think it's such a shame because you're missing out on bedtime giggles and convo. But yes, I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next week for another one.